Oh, hi, Daly. There's some very favorite music of mine when we talk about, well, horror, yes, but more of the cosmic horror or eldritch horror, as it were. And so the workshop is going to be that approach. If my voice is still a little squeaky, it is what it is, because I've been talking for a while now. Pardon me. Oh, where did you go? There it is. Yep. Have a good night, DMP. Thank you for hanging out. As long as you did. Y'all better watch out. We have a mod in chat now. Daily, though, it's been a very nice evening, very friendly, and kind of a woohoo. We're back in the workshop. Now, if any of you watched Chroma Company, this music would be very fitting, and there's a reason for it. Chroma Company was the several years long D&D campaign that was run on this channel. It is on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube here in the future, hi from the past, now the present. It's good to see you, and thank you for dropping by. So in getting going for Call of Cthulhu, the primary point to begin is what is this book? What is this game? What is Cthulhu? Not everyone may know. As much as Cthulhu is often brought up in circles such as ours, as role players, as tabletop enthusiasts, as those who enjoy a good story from many different angles. Not everyone may be familiar with who or what Cthulhu is, or the implications of a role-playing game around this thing known as Cthulhu. Yeah, hey, I'm glad it arrived in good order, Bane. I hope the minis made it in one no more than two pieces themselves. It was a little bit tricky. I wanted to find a way that I could ship everything without it, without things getting squished or however. So hopefully that it worked fine. Oh, good. I'm happy then. It was interesting playing Tetris with that. But Bane, I appreciate. Well, and I appreciate that support. Friendly local game stores, like, that's what it's about, right? We have to compete with eBay and Amazon and liquidators and even the publishers themselves. And so for any of you who choose to do things like get your book of Call of Cthulhu at your store, well, it's workshops like this where we teach the game, we discuss it, we give you a place to play it or meet others with whom you can play it. Hey, plus 10 Broadsword. Good to see you. Call of Cthulhu is about investigation and the death spiral of madness. Well, that's it, everyone. Pack up, and I guess we're going home. Okay, well, there might be a little bit more to it than that. Welcome, plus 10. It's good to see you again. Call of Cthulhu, well, do you need to understand what Cthulhu is in a real-world sense or in its own lore? No. There is a concept around it that is the springboard. Just like Dungeons and Dragons do not have to have dungeons nor dragons. I have run many sessions where neither of those things have been involved. And I've had way more dungeons than dragons, now that I'm thinking about it. So dragons are actually pretty scarce. In many games of Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu may never show up or be mentioned or be relevant to the events that are happening. So it is titled Call of Cthulhu, but I would really like you to focus more on these first two words. Horror role-playing. This is a game that does involve investigation, uncovering a mystery. Could it be kind of slapstick and Scooby-Doo? It could. If everyone at the table is amenable to that, of course. In many cases, though, it gets a little darker. It's not just, old man McGillicuddy hoping to scare everyone off the property so he can inherit it. This is, someone in town has been murdered, and you find out that it is a cult run by none other than the mayor of town. Oh. I say oh kind of sarcastically. It's actually supposed to be, wow, well, I never expected that. It is about that unveiling of the unexpected, to learn greater and deeper things, but things that in so doing might make us feel small or even incoherent. If you've spent, you're a retired professor, you hold 1 or 2 doctorates and things, and then you realize that your entire life has been a lie because of something that you just found in the course of an investigation. There's kind of like Looney Tunes madness, like, oh, I'm wacky. And then there's just these realizations that things are a lot deeper and broader and older. So the horror, it could be about, blood and guts. It could be about monsters. But this is not a game like D&D where a monster is an expected foe. You might go in D&D, oh, there's a skeleton? Well, that's inconvenient. Let's fight it. In Call of Cthulhu, seeing a skeleton rise up is very much not supposed to happen. And the fact that it just did tests your resolve. Because something's going on. And you hope it is mirrors and smoke and strings and whatever. A tape recording in the background and someone in a mask. You pray that that's what the case is. Because now, in the world in which this is taking place, the real world, supposedly, this should not happen. Ever. Except in a story. And to realize that you might actually be in a story, or everything you've learned and been told your life is a lie, well... And then what do? Well, you solve a mystery. You might rewrite history. DuckTales, a woohoo. Maybe DuckTales could be a different title for Call of Cthulhu. Maybe. Because, as Evelyn said, you do hope. You do hope for a brighter future. You hope for the sun to come up in the morning after the events of this night. You hope for a lot of things. And you struggle and you try and get it, realizing that you may very well not. Well, Bane, for the report you're saying on the local stores to you, hopefully the one that does have the room but not the stuff on it, hopefully that's something that they're able to get that restocked and to reprime that pump. If DuckTales are coming in, I expect to be saved by Darkwing Duck. So throughout the course of this workshop, we're going to delve into this. For tonight, don't worry about creating characters. That's actually next week. We're going to be exploring the game system, the rules tomorrow. How do you go about doing things and resolving things? But for tonight, you saw a strange book on a shelf at a strange store. Many friendly local game stores have their own local flavor. So let's talk about the themes and the concepts. Let's talk about what cosmic horror is. And this book does go into it. And we're going to bounce between the book and a couple other resources to consider and a couple examples to play for you all. The most merciful thing in the world... Here, I'll zoom in on this for you all. There we go. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday, the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Between a quote like that and art like this, you can imagine a breadth of possibilities. Again, we're not talking rules. How many hit points does this thing have? Don't know. Don't care. It really doesn't matter. There's a very good chance that this thing has 0. And by 0, I mean it's incalculable. There are just things that exist, whether they should or not, that there's really not much that can be done about them, except to perhaps try to understand it or flee into that ignorance. Hi, Rep Artist. Call of Cthulhu is a game full of secrets, mysteries, and horror. Playing the role of a steadfast investigator, you will travel to strange and dangerous places, uncover foul plots, and stand against the terrors of the night. You will encounter sanity-blasting entities, monsters, and insane cultists. Within strange and forgotten tomes of lore, you will find secrets that man was not meant to know. You and your companions may very well decide the fate of the world. Call of Cthulhu is a horror-themed role-playing game based on the writings of Howard Phillips Lovecraft. And it will go into, it'll go into a little bit of that. There's the foreword about how the author came to find it as well. Do you need to read Lovecraft's works to play Call of Cthulhu? No. Just like you don't need to read many fantasy books to play D&D. You don't need to read the Vampire Diaries to play... Oh, what's this? Vampire the Masquerade. Why do I have Vampire the Masquerade open if we're talking about cosmic horror and or its its kissing cousin of Eldritch horror? Well, many of those concepts are here in Vampire. Now, they may not be as overtly presented, but they're still there. The same the same trends and themes. Perhaps feelings of hope versus an infinite pool in which you may drown. Of the supernatural and mysteries. Here we go. Hey, welcome and thank you very much for the raid. So we're welcoming you in here. Whoop. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Hi, can I help you? Would you like to discuss horror? Ma'am? No? Okay. Well, don't poke yourself in the eye, please. Thank you. I know, you're lovely. Hi, Dragon. So, welcome, Raiders. I'll give you a quick shout-out once the cat, the cot, is away from the mouse, of all things. Gaming Zeta 0. Okay. Hi. I need that mouse, ma'am. Please don't sit on it, okay? You're beautiful. You are a cacophony of colors, but I gotta talk to everyone, okay? Don't worry, you get some pets. Alright. So you can find, obviously, themes of horror. Now, VTM styles itself as personal and political horror. If you look at the supernatural side of it, that's where you delve into the cosmic the cosmic bend of things. And cosmic horror is not just, well, it's a slasher film, it's a spooky, scary skeleton. It is that feeling of breadth and depth where you are playing as someone who is normal. In D&D, I mean, yeah, thematically you might be, I'm the farmer's son as a level 1 adventurer. As a level 1 adventurer, you're even above the commoners of the land. And there's an expectation of a bright future on the horizon with a lot of bumps along the way, and you're the big damn heroes who, presumably, though you're not quite sure how, and hopefully you will survive to the end, but you're presumed to make it to the end. In a game like Vampire and in Call of Cthulhu, you have to throw that out the window. Your character is a librarian. Your character, your investigator, is a firefighter. Your character is the mayor of town. Or your character is a cultist. Is a researcher. We're talking about people, of course, of different, ages and experience levels. But ultimately, you are a person, you're a normal person in a normal world. And even if your character is a researcher of the occult, that character may not have actually ever experienced the occult. Is a fan, reads a bunch of different works, and yet, when something actually manifests is truly fantastic, the mechanical sanity drop still happens. Now, the beginning of this book is written as if you might not have much, if any roleplay experience. It's very good in introducing the ideas in an order and even going through this dialogue such that you can follow along the gist and the ideas. I'm not going to get into the minutia here. I will urge you, get this book, read it through. If you're an experienced role player, even in a horror game, Maybe you should skip this part. Pardon me. In general, the Cthulhu mythos, as originated by Lovecraft, defines this game. However, certain interesting concepts and creations by some of Lovecraft's contemporaries and beyond have also been used to ensure that the... Oh, cat. Man, we have... Sorry. Have also been used to ensure that the full horrors of the mythos can be utilized. Many Call of Cthulhu scenarios are set in the United States in the 1920s, called the Classic Era, in which most of Lovecraft's tales were set. To Lovecraft, the 1920s were modern day, and so this book uses both the Classic Era and our own modern day as period settings. Many supplements and published scenarios exist for different eras, including Gaslight, Victorian, and the Dark Ages. And there's also one for the Old West. There's one that's the Atomic Age Call of Cthulhu. And there's even different games that still play into the concept. Delta Green. Delta Green is kind of like an X-Files, more in our modern day. A horror is still a horror, but now you get to find out, using computers and not just a magnifying glass and a deerstalker hat. So set your games when you wish. If so desire to keep or may change the period to a more modern date or a more ancient one. The Cthulhu mythos transcends all time and space, and the unfathomable machinations of the old ones could spill into any conceivable setting or historical period. Our game is taking place in October of 1936, Oklahoma. A couple notes here about what you need to play, and some other references here. Whoa, hello? Do you fight these in a game of Call of Cthulhu? Maybe. Hopefully you don't. Or maybe in a game of Call of Cthulhu, it's actually your job to summon a creature like this. Huh. Well, anyway. This is a lot of the basics. Let's get into the themes. There are notes about the life and times of Lovecraft. What affected him as a child growing up to lean into such tales, to explore, darker topics, concepts of the supernatural, maybe even things that could be pessimistic of humanity. There's a lot of history, kind of a mini biography of that author. And this book also brings up similar writers as well. For when you are, you're like, well, okay, there's Lovecraft, but there's other people who have expanded upon those works or have things that are very close in parallel. I'm not going to read Lovecraft's biography. Again, you can do that in this book or through other ways. Lovecraft once wrote, "All my tales are based upon the fundamental premise that common human laws and interests and emotions have no validity or significance in the vast cosmos at large." He further imagined that the fundamental truths of the universe were so alien and horrifying that mere exposure to them might result in madness or self-deletion. While humanity might crave both comfort and the truth, only one or the other was possible. The human mind is an inflexible container. It cannot maintain cosmic truth and complete sanity. More of one poured in must spill out more of the other. Humans desperate for the power cloaked within truth might choose to forego all remnants of sanity in exchange for becoming adept at manipulating the secrets of time and space. their devil's bargains made. These merciless sorcerers would whistle down devastation and doom to this world in exchange for more knowledge and power. Lovecraft's working out of these ideas in his fiction became known as the Cthulhu Mythos. The term encompasses a complex and broad group of sometimes contradictory narratives, stories, essays, letters, and deductions, so extensive as to be impossible to summarize in detail. And not the least because the new Mythos material continues to be written around the world. In fact, there is a Call of Cthulhu supplement that is written in just Korean, and I believe it takes place there and about societal things that happen. Adding to the confusion, one of his perceptions was that the truly alien is genuinely unknowable. The mythos becomes not just mysterious, but protean and contradictory. Not only do we not know it, we never can know it. As it transpires, we have only our own names for most of these things. We do not even know their real names for themselves, or if they have names. This gets a little bit into the concept of the great old ones, the outer gods, the elder gods. Do you need to know this stuff to run Cthulhu? No. Again, Cthulhu is not the boss monster of Call of Cthulhu. Could it be? Yes. Is it always? No. Understanding Nyarlathotep, Azathoth, Yog-Sothoth, Hastur, Dagon, all of these other things, it's cool, and there's such a great amount of ideas that can pour forth from these concepts. Do you have to memorize and know them? No, not at all. If you are willing to tell a tale of learning, of discovering, of seeing what pours out of one ear as something else goes in the other, that is what Call of Cthulhu is about. And it's about that, can you survive understanding that there are things you will never understand? And not in a way that seems so remote and distant it's easy to forget about or give up. This would be like learning that the grass actually listens to you and understands you, and that things happen because of what the grass overhears. If you learn that and you have that as a deeply held belief, that could very well be based on your observations of grass. How can you live the rest of your life like that? Especially if there's other people who will not believe you or can't believe you. Who are you going to talk to about that? Where is that hope that Ivalon was talking about earlier when faced on the brink of a great many things? The star spawn of Cthulhu came down upon the earth and conquered a vast reach of land in the primordial Pacific Ocean, but were trapped when it sank beneath the surface. Huh. Actual extraterrestrial beings. Or maybe, if you want to involve some philosophy, what if in your story in Call of Cthulhu, Cthulhu might have been something not from here, but has been here for so long, is arguably native, has been changed, and is actually a creature of this earth, and we are the ones that are not made in the image of this creature. nor have a particular influence to or from. What if you learn about the nature of, uh, over the course of the story? You want to delve into old pantheons, Egyptian or Greek? Would you like to challenge concepts? What or who is the origin of the Abrahamic God? Because these are things that really rock people, and we have spent millennia trying to understand and pursue, hoping and moving forwards into the future, but always looking back and yet being further and further away from it. So we're not going to create investigators, but hopefully there is that depth. In this case, there's not exactly a lot of challenge. Like, there are horrific things like the dead rising from their graves, shadows peeling themselves off the walls, the grass listening to you. These are things that are all wonderful to be explored. You can have sex and violence, and it could be a splatter fest if you want horror in that way as well. There was a rather intense incident that happened in Our Lady in Red story last night, involving someone singing into a microphone. And you can have that overt horror, but the system that, again, we'll get to the rules tomorrow night, encourages that build up, that slow burn, the little clues along the way, that right after you get that little jump scare of the skeleton popping out, oh, it was just the anatomical skeleton in the closet of the hospital. It's not real. I mean, it might be a real skeleton, but it's not actually unalive. And you have that little moment of, oh. And then you go on to realize that it's actually following you. That is the burn. That is the actual hook. It's not just the overt, scary, spooky stuff. And then it's the realization of, I now live in a world where this is capable. What am I going to do as a doctor, a nurse, as a patient, a custodian, as whatever, some official, a secretary? What am I going to do with the thing that's there and the rest of my life? And then you realize that that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a skeleton inside me right now. It's I like the perspective kind of like that, where our brains are us, and we're actually all pilots of biomechanical mechs, because we're in the cockpit up here, and we have full control over moving things and battling. Hi, Diadems. So a couple other concepts. Hopefully you get the idea. And you might go, well, I've never contemplated reality that way, but I am used to horror movies. Or maybe you watched us play Vampire, and you're like, well, I understand vampires. You watch us play Alien. You say, well, I haven't seen the movies, but I get Alien. Or Cyberpunk. You go, yep, dystopias. That's something we hope we don't get into. And I understand pessimism or, some hyperbolic extremes of society. But maybe you've never challenged yourself to run a mystery or to explore these more existential things. And that might turn you off, or go, I don't feel confident in running something like this. There are plenty of scenarios. And again, they all don't necessarily deal with the Elder Gods. There's a really solid one called Scritch Scratch. Scritch Scratch is about rats. There's one in the and I'm, you know what? Shame on me. I forget the name of the Old West setting for Call of Cthulhu. There's a scenario set there where your characters go and explore an old silver mine. So things don't have to be, of infinite depth, and you can keep it to it. You can just say it's a cult. Watch an X-Files episode. Watch a Twilight Zone episode of something. Yes, ma'am. I know you want to play fetch. All right, come here. I know. I'm gonna throw it. Go get it. You don't have to delve into that. If you want to make it more of a monster fight, I mean, it's a bit of a lethal system, but you can make it about the more overt things, surviving a slasher that's on the loose in the city and investigating that as a crime. And then maybe at the end, you dangle that, well, we've solved it, we've captured the person, we've lived, and then you find out that this person had some strange writings. Well, since you familiarized yourself with, the basic mechanics, you dealt with, a human horror, but now you see what influenced. Who could go and rip a bunch of people in London? And then you find this person named Jack's notes. Now, we have seen concepts of cosmic horror explored in some other media as well. In video games, you have Dead by Daylight. In a sense, it's not a deep exploration of it per se, but it does touch upon that idea. So if you're familiar with Dead by Daylight, you have an idea of cosmic horror. If you have played Bloodborne, have you played Bloodborne? Have you heard of it? Bloodborne is an example of cosmic horror, and if, to an extent, I can use cosmic and eldritch horror interchangeably. There are distinctions, but it's like saying I listen to rock music. Well, there's 100 different types. Have you played a game called Signalis? I believe it was a game that came out last year. If you play Signalis, you have an introduction to horror, cosmic horror. So, there is the book. I will urge you to pick it up from your local store and reference it. Also, here is an article that can delve into it a little bit as well. Oh, well, hey. Thank you to the anonymous gifter of a subscription to Ivalon. Cosmic horror eschews the traditional threat of death that underpins most horror. No serial murders. I mean, that's how it starts, right? No ravenous beasts, no vengeful specters. The central thesis statement of cosmic horror is that mankind is small to the point of insignificance. There is a vast and incomprehensible universe out there that does not know we exist and would not care if we cease doing so. Beyond the tiny understanding of our reality that we have spent generations cultivating lies, endless horror that would unravel our tiny minds to perceive. Lovecraft developed a family of impossible beings that dwells amongst the furthest stars and beneath the deepest seas. Most know and recognize his most popular creation, the eponymous horror of his most popular story, the Call of Cthulhu. The point of cosmic horror is to reach a logical endpoint of the fear of the unknown. It posits that beyond all the typical questions that science has no answer to lie questions. I'm sorry, the pacing on that mankind hasn't even thought to ask yet. Cosmic horror stories can be difficult to tell because they require a great deal of imagination. Simply describing a monster from space or the sea doesn't generally cut it. Predator, for example, is about an alien who defies human explanation and poses a substantial threat to mankind. But the Yautja don't belong alongside Cthulhu and company. Godzilla is a giant monster who emerges from the sea, but everyone knows how the King of Monsters was created, and he doesn't challenge mankind's understanding of the universe. The primary difference between cosmic horror isn't the monsters, it's the way people react to them. Madness is a central theme in much of Lovecraft's cosmic horror. Frequently, the central humans of the story find themselves driven to catastrophic mental breakdown, if not something else, by the visage of whichever great old one they catch a glimpse of. Some modern incarnations have misattributed this to sort of mystical enchantment, suggesting that Cthulhu has the supernatural psychic capability to drive men mad. However, in the original narratives, people simply go mad the first time their mind attempts to take in a creature like Cthulhu. The scariest thing about the Great Old Ones and related beings is that they don't often do anything to their supposed victims. The mere existence of these things that are so far beyond humankind's understanding is the threat they pose. Good cosmic horror makes the human reading it consider their place in the universe and grapple with the existentially unpleasant reality that they are not significant. For as much as in modern culture, there's a lot of us. There's terms like ego surfing. Everyone has a bio for the different services we use, and it's adorned with the things that we think make us who we are. And then to realize that maybe none of that actually matters. Maybe I don't. Where did I come from? Where did I go? And your name isn't even Cotton Eye Joe. But it's not even out of a malice, like, humans have to be destroyed. You are as an ant is to you. To these concepts, whether they even have a manifestation or not. They exist. Maybe you say mercifully, ants don't comprehend us. They might see us as motion or blotting out light, or we might give off like a chemical scent or something. We're perceived, but we aren't known. An ant will crawl on you and not necessarily fear the repercussions of it. And sometimes you might go, oh, look at you, little guy. I'm going to put you back with the others. And other times you might go and cover them in chocolate and eat them by the handful. But here you are as a sentient, sapient human being. And yet to realize that despite that and what you think you know about yourself, the world, other people, that there are greater and more important things than anything going on in your life. Now, something else to bring up is, how does this intersect with the 20s? Well, of course, that's where you're going to find a lot of reference material, because that's where many of these stories were written. If you read about the Roaring Twenties as well, and not that your name or your game has to take place in the 20s. Remember, we're taking place in the Great Depression, 1936 in Oklahoma. But this is a starting point, and this is a very compelling one, because especially if the world starts out as it should, as we know it, as we can comprehend it, everything is normal, even if World War II looms on the horizon, or there's, atrocities committed in the present day or whatever. We start from this recognition. And so if you read a little bit about the place and the time that you want to run. There's so much that can be drawn from. The 20s is very popular as we are becoming even more mechanized. We are post World War One, the last Great War. And things are definitely changing. The nation's total wealth more than doubled between 20 and 29. This economic engine swept many Americans into an affluent consumer culture. Now this is every, Tom, Dick, and Harry is involved in consumer culture, for better or worse, and into varying degrees. And it's also a period of conflict, of ideas. What is the concept of, perhaps the most familiar symbol of the Roaring Twenties is probably the flapper, a young woman with bobbed hair. I think pixie cuts came about, not just bobs too, and short skirts, who drank, smoked, and said unladylike things, in addition to being more sexually free than previous generations. In reality, most young women in the 1920s did none of these things, though many did adopt a fashionable flapper wardrobe. But even those women who were not flappers gained some unprecedented freedoms. This was a time of the 19th Amendment we have for voting, we have prohibition, we have a lot of racial conflict, and a further step in a coming of age in a post-Civil War society. We're seeing many people switch from very much in blue-collar jobs to white-collar jobs. There is so much film. Film was getting to be big, and it would even continue to grow through the Depression as people were looking for things to do with the time they had on their hands. Radio continued. Jazz. Oh, don't get me started on the devil's music of jazz. So having these human conflicts, in a sense, is important as a backdrop for something like cosmic horror, because you say, wow, if things are bad among the humans, and you go, oh wow, it's really great, we just had this breakthrough, or we just had a breakdown, and then to realize that major event that cost people, cost countries, a decimation of their population, in some grand scheme, was wrong, or actually doesn't matter at all. And so the 20s had a lot going on. And so, read about it. In my case, I made sure to delve into the 30s and into Oklahoma. In fact, speaking of Oklahoma, there was something that happened in 1921 in Oklahoma. Yep, Claudia can vote. Oh, she voted for FDR? Well, don't let Henry hear you say that. Yep, Sawtooth. Jazz is actually the cultists of a great old one were introducing this in order to disrupt the rhythm of our lives and to make us more open to the forces of chaos. Which, you know what? That could very well be a solid jump. Think about any old conspiracies or mix-arounds or whatever, and you have a Call of Cthulhu game. You don't need to know the mythos as it exists. This is just simply exploring the would-be's, could-be's, going back into the unsolved mysteries of present day or history, and having fun with it. Now, what about some works? If I may read. This is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe, who of course wrote very somber, morose, maybe even some horror things. What about cosmic horror? What about things that might make you question The world that you walk on, the earth beneath your feet, the being that you are, as you know yourself, but maybe that is not actually you. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright. I have reached these lands but newly, from an ultimate dim Thule, from a wild, weird clime that lieth sublime, out of space, out of time. If you're not familiar with a Thule, or what the concept of an ultimate Thule is, it is an extreme, the most. And yet here we've already established that this person has arrived from an ultimate. To where? Well, we arrived from a place to a place that has no place nor time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and titan woods, with forms that no man can discover, for the tears that drip all over. Mountains toppling evermore, into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire, lakes that endlessly outspread, their lone waters lone and dread, their still waters, still and chilly, with the snows of the lulling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread, their lone waters lone and dead, their sad waters, sad and chilly, with the snows of the lulling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever. By the grey woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp. By the dismal tarns and pools, where dwell the ghouls. By each spot the most unholy, in each nook most melancholy, there the traveler meets, aghast, sheeted memories of the past, shrouded forms that start and sigh as they pass the wanderer by, white-robed forms of friends long given in agony to the earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region. For the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis an El Dorado. But the traveler traveling through it may not, dare not openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. So wills its king, who hath forbid the uplifting of the fringed lid, and thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have wandered home but newly from this ultimate dim Thule. Plus 10 says, my friend told me nature is chaos, but creates order. And when man creates order within nature, he creates chaos. What a terrible thing to tell a friend. It is all very much connected, is it not? And you know what? I have time, I think, for one more. And I will let a nicer voice than mine, which is, 99.5% recovered, read Casilda's Song from The King in Yellow, Act 1, Scene 2. Now, what is The King in Yellow? If you don't know, maybe you should look it up. Maybe a place called, well, you know what? we'll get to it in a moment.
Along the shore, the cloud waves break. The twin suns sink behind the lake. The shadows lengthen in Carcosa. Strange is the night where black stars rise, and strange moons circle through the skies. But stranger still is lost Carcosa. Songs that the Hyades shall sing, where flap the tatters of the king, must die unheard in dim Carcosa. Song of my soul, my voice is dead. Die thou, unsung, as tears unshed shall dry and die in lost Carcosa.
Cassilda's Song, from The King in Yellow, Act 1, Scene 2.
What was that? What is The King in Yellow? Is it a? It sounds like it's a play, a song within a play. It sounded kind of chanted. And where's Carcosa? What is Carcosa? Apparently a place with twin suns. Strange is the night where black stars rise and strange moons circle through the skies. This is an example of a part of cosmic horror. This sounds alluring. It sounds coherent. But what and where is this place? Black stars rise. How does that work? The stars are iridescent, right? They're little white specks. I understand, I guess, the concept of a black star, but where, when, what is a place that has a strange night where black stars rise? And what's happening to this place known as Carcosa? Is Carcosa on a map somewhere? A map of antiquity? A map of the present day? Whether the present day is, the 1920s or the 2020s, 100 years later. These are excellent questions. Do you have a poem by Edgar Allan Poe? Do you have something like this, The King in Yellow? Is there something that you heard that just it never seemed to make sense? Now is your chance through the Call of Cthulhu to make sense of it. Welcome, Raiders. It is good to have you back, GM Culprid. Hello, shoutouts to you, GM Culprid. And how was your game tonight? What was going on in Celesta? And so Ivlon asks, it scrolled up. Hang on, because I was giving the shoutouts here. The real brain teaser is, how do you see a black star at night? And you might say, yeah, I don't know, is it infrared? Is it ultraviolet? Do you need X-rays? And if so, I mean, X-rays, telescopes and stuff, weren't in the 20s or even in an ancient time. So what let people see that? Or you go deeper and you say, whoever wrote this has a concept or an actual manifestation of night that is wholly alien to our own. I understand what night is supposed to be, what it is, what I've experienced. I've experienced many nights, but never a night where I could see black stars rise. And now I'm not even wondering about kind of a supernatural detached concept of what is a black star. What is happening where the night is not as we know it? There is some fundamentally altered stuff happening here. Therein is the hook. Therein is the building of dread and tension. The building terror that leads to the horror. And that realization that everything that you thought you knew, even if you could feel it, taste it, hear it, to be dashed. Like the lakes without a shore by Carcosa. Now, in this, obviously, there's a lot of fun and pulp to explore. This is the age of pulp comics and adventures. Things like, in a more modern time, well, there's the old radio dramas of The Shadow. Many of you might be familiar with Indiana Jones. If you're not, Indiana Jones is a series of 3 movies that explore that kind of pulp adventure of we have a world as we know it, but there are things that even a man of science can go and doubt. And so you can lean into the pulp, into that style of adventure in Call of Cthulhu. You can go into an ancient temple. Yeah, they were printed in pulp magazines. And again, as the media was spreading of magazines and some early radio dramas and such, this was... Plus 10 says, my biggest moment of cosmic horror was hitting 30 and realizing the reality of my financial situation. Hopefully that reality is not bending too hard for you, plus 10. I hope you're doing well, with all things considered. But many of that, yeah. You go from just a childhood to adulthood. And you're like, wow, this is how this works. And and you're blindsided by it, or you stumble into it, or whatever. Oh, Black Mask as well, Evelyn, yeah. So, Mike, thank you also for the first time chat. And it's good to have you here. The gravitational lensing of background stars as the answer to seeing that. So we're discussing Call of Cthulhu, but we're not delving into the rules. We're going to save that for tomorrow's workshop. For tonight, we want to discuss what the type of horror is that it's presenting. And I could probably tie this all up once more very neatly by actually bringing up Vampire the Masquerade. I made mention that Vampire the Masquerade, despite touting itself as personal and political horror, and you're like, oh yeah, there's vampires. It mentions werewolves, and there's some ghosts and mages and stuff. I get the horror. Yeah, it's there. That's the surface level stuff. There is a cosmic or eldritch horror that is the core essence of VTM. Because even after you've traversed to the other side of life as a vampire, not only are you dealing with what you thought you knew as a human, you have to come to terms with this entirely new and overlaid existence that has also been there the entire time. Because you are unliving, unbreathing proof of it. And if that weren't enough, if that alone weren't enough to get you to question who and what you are as an individual, you go on to realize that even these creatures with supernatural powers, who have lived, unlived eons, some of them anyway, ask many of the same questions that they always have in life and in undeath, and question the origins of what they are as kindred. A being that infests their corpse and keeps them shuffling and animated with a semblance of life, a mimicry of it, as if it's a creature trying to understand the inhabitants of this planet, trying to work with it and through it, and in a sense almost integrate with it, as we see with the emergence of Thin Bloods. And why are Thin Bloods so dangerous to vampires in VTM? They can walk around in the daytime. They have an attunement to the blood, the vitae. They can interact with it and yet lack some of the more monstrous downplays. Why would humans be scared of this Thin Blood? Are they human? What if the Thin Bloods are actually the next step in humanity? Because this symbiotic and also at the same time parasitic creature that was spawned into this world, well, according to some lore, vampirism was the curse of Cain, given to Cain by God. What is God? Who is God? And thus, what is this thing inside you? This beast, this curse, this blessing that continues to baffle and make you fundamentally question life and unlife to its core. You cut your hair before you go into your day sleep. You wake up the next night and it's grown back. Just as the night you died. When did that happen? How did that happen? In a fit of rage, I used a cheese grater on the tattoo on my arm. And when I woke up the next night, it was back. That was ink physically deposited in my undead flesh. That flesh was removed. And even if the flesh grows back, my tattoo is with it. What's going on? Am I like a photocopy of me? How does my body that doesn't... It's not alive, but it knows its shape. It knows how it's supposed to be, because it can repair itself. This is much more of that overt supernatural bend, but the questions are still similar to people who live in the 1920s, the 30s. You have a Call of Cthulhu game in World War I set in Europe. In World War II in the Old West, in gaslight Victorian England, in the Atomic Age. Yeah, it's great until it's not plus 10. All right. I need to get up and take a quick break, everyone. So enjoy our break screen, which is probably a little bit more festive than the topics we were discussing, but yet you might still find some fun hidden things there for you. And then when we come back, we can talk about this, and if any of you want some prize capsules, I can pull those too. I'll see you in a little bit, everyone.